Hello everyone, welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I'm Richard Carrollton here at fmtraining.tv. Welcome everyone. Today is Monday and we're going to be doing 1 hour of training. It's day 1 of 5 days of awesome training on a specific topic, which is kind of interesting. We'll get to this momentarily. I want to welcome Dave Henderson. Dave Henderson, are you there, Dave?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Roger that, Dave. You're cleared. All right, so then Margaret Carlton, are you there? She is the backup emergency inflatable CEO. It's like that airline. What was that? It was that. Remember the airplane movie, and they had to have an autopilot when the pilot was down, and they had the autopilot, and this inflatable dude blows up and is driving the airplane. So,
oh my God,
that was so funny. So the inflatable emergency CEO, right? So we inflate her. Upcoming broadcast schedule. I'm going to press the button here and see what happens. What happens? It is Monday after all. So today is way too many pictures of me doing my doctor outfit. I will try to mirror the doctor outfit tomorrow. But we're going to be doing an analysis on audits. So the idea with an audit and why we're talking about these basically the next 5 or 6 days is every one of you here who's watching this, either you've had to do this recently or you're going to have to do it. Every last one of you. There's no one here who's exempted from this unless you don't do FileMaker at all and you're bored and you're just watching us. But if you do FileMaker at all, sooner or later you're going to have to, someone's going to say, I need help with this solution. And you're going to have to evaluate that solution and in an attempt to help them. Right? And so that's what this is about. There's no one here who gets away from this. If you're an in-house developer, this is going to happen to you because you'll change jobs or something will happen or whatever, and you'll end up being dropped on another project. You're not going to work on the same FileMaker solution for your entire professional career. Understand that. Very, very, very important. Upcoming, real quick, so this is the broadcast schedule. We're going to be covering this one topic this week. Moving on real quick. Reminder, this week is so let's talk about this real quick. This week is some fresh content, but everything here you need to know is already training that we have provided either in our paid training or in our live streams or both, right? Ideally, all of you would have if you want to support the channel and have all the material you need to be successful doing an audit, you need to have our training. So you either have the video training over here or have the complete bundle over here. Really, really important that you support the channel and understand that in 5 days, I have to teach you everything you need to learn over 10 years, okay? I'm going to give you an outline for this. Hopefully one of my junior staff, Christian Olson, if he's still here, he may have disappeared. One of the junior staff listens to this and writes an outline. We need an outline format and a Word file that we can give the people. But it's all the stuff you're going to need to be thinking about. Very, very, very important. So we have different topics for different days. Today is like basically the idea that you get airdropped at a customer. So let's dive into this real quick. So today is not technical. Today is a conversation about understanding that the auditing a FileMaker solution, if you're an in-house developer, you're going to change jobs sooner or later, and you're going to be given a solution that you're supposed to support. If you're a FileMaker developer, like a paid kind of outside professional, quote unquote, I say professional very loosely, but you're a professional developer, and then the goal for you is that you're going to see this happen all the time because we're brought in all the time to help with solutions that need help. The developer's not there anymore. The developer died. They didn't get along with the organization, whatever happens. But it's the exactly the same thing that happens like Kyle. So Kyle works in-house as a developer. Say he goes to Victoria's Secret. So Kyle is going to leave the current employer. He's going to work on FileMaker Solutions at Victoria's Secret. Kyle would probably consider that a substantial upgrade. Okay. And so what is Kyle likely to see there? There's some important things. Important things to consider about that. Real quick. So the goals today is to prepare you for the day when you're asked to do a review or an audit. An audit or a review is the same thing for our terminology here. It means exactly the same thing. It's the idea that you're going to have to look at a solution and think about what's going on with that solution. It's going to happen to everyone here. There's no one that gets away from this today that unless you're never going to do development anymore, then maybe this isn't for you, but then why are you here? Maybe you love our jokes or something, or I'm amazingly beautiful and good looking. I don't know. Why are you here, right? So reviewing or auditing a solution requires all the skills you have amassed here. So like Oregon Dean has been around the block. He could do this. Megan is not ready for this. Megan needs to learn this. Kyle probably could learn this if he hasn't learned it, but he hasn't probably had much practice. Creating my first big solution. Does it make sense for me to watch this? What you shouldn't do. Yeah, it's interesting, Blair. Listen to it in the background. A lot of people listen in the background, and if something exciting happens, and they pay more attention to it. But today is kind of a little bit about the people that you're going to have to interact with. So let's talk about this real quick. So today is about customer management skills. But it's more about understanding the players, the organizational players that are wherever you're going, right? Because, and I've got a great analogy here for this, but we'll get to that. But then we're going to be talking about FileMaker technical design skills, things to stay away from, things that we've talked about. Everything here we've talked about before, spread over the last X number of years, and also in our training, right? But we're going to bring it all together into like 1 week. Does that make sense? Very important. Usability and UI UX skills, right? And of course, it's different than Nick's kind of conversation. Nick is like, you should do it this way, or it's an abomination, right? Or whatever, right? But that, when you're dealing with people, it's not like all or nothing kind of thing. There's some complexities here, and we're going to talk about that today, right? Then we have the course technical server skills. So guess what? Thursday and Friday, we have Jacob Taylor in to assist us. So today's Dave Henderson assisting me. Tomorrow, Calvin's here. Garrett Debsky, who's was part of our live stream when we were reviewing the Claris keynote, etc. He was here for that, so he'll be here on Wednesday. Then Jacob Taylor Thursday and Friday. So all this is important. So keep in mind that every one of us is weak in some area in the FileMaker platform. I don't know anyone who absolutely is great at everything. And so even myself, I'm like, for example, if you had me install Linux on the server, I would have to watch our Linux video again and follow along and do what Jacob did. So once the server's going, I'm great on configuration, but in terms of all the little screws to turn things like that, that's not in my wheelhouse as much as it probably should be, right? So anyway, you're going to need to think about this as you go into this situation. So understand 5 days of content. Day one, this is today is basically the non-technical part of the day. Then day two, we're going to be talking about file structure issues, relational diagrams, numbering, organization of, what are you looking at? What does the solution look at? Is it good? Is it well documented? Is it not documented? Because once again, this isn't about you building a brand new solution, okay? It's not about that. It's not about building a brand new solution. It's about evaluating a solution that's already in use. It's already being used by a customer, and they need help, right? They need an in-house person. They don't want to hire a consultant, or they want to hire a consultant to come in temporarily, right? So day three with Garrett. Once again, these are all topics we've hammered on, but we're hitting them from a little bit different perspective. It's a moment where you need to evaluate what this other person has done, and you're kind of coming behind them, and right? And once again, it's not this absolute Nick conversation. I don't know that Nick easily has this kind of conversation, because when you're an artist, it's kind of all or nothing. A lot of it is that way. And this kind of conversation is a little bit like a hostage negotiation. There's some negotiation going on here between you and the customer, figuring out what they need, what they're willing to spend for, things like that. Then day four is server inspection. Hopefully they have one, right? The idea of like, hey, we have this mission critical database and we don't have a server, right? And then of course we have disaster recovery. And this gets back into Rick Fosnot, who had a tornado literally, without saying the F word, it completely f***ed up his server, his office. It took his server, lifted it up, did the Dorothy thing with Toto and the evil wicked witch of the West or whatever, and shot it over to the next state or city, never to be seen from again. So they had to restore from a backup, right? So you have to have backups. There has to be a disaster recovery plan, okay? So I would almost love to have him on the broadcast, because it would be interesting to hear his thoughts about Friday. Margaret, if he could, I don't know, we might want to just talk to him a little bit if you want to reach out to him, Margaret, and see if he has any thoughts about, after he's been through a disaster, what things would he do differently in advance? That would be good to hear. All right, so understand a very, very, very important concept for today. So understand that this conversation is a majority of the situations you as developers will have is not, come build me a brand new file. That is really kind of, I don't want to say rare, but not in the majority. I would say if someone calls and hires us, 25% of the time, 30% of the time, it's building a solution. A vast majority of the time, it's It's fix a solution that's already in flight. So understand that you are being asked to audit a solution that's already flying. So basically you're coming in and they are talking to you saying, hey, would you like to be the pilot of our airplane? And you're interviewing for this job as a professional pilot. And understand that this is happening while the plane's already in the air flying with 500 people behind you, or 200 people, or 80 people, or whatever it is. The plane's already on the ground. It's kind of a weird analogy, but you got beamed in the cockpit, and oh, by the way, check out our plane, and what do you think about it? And can you work on it with us or fix something for us? Really, that's where this goes. They're not, most of the time, you're not asked to audit or review something and just write it up and say, here it is, have a nice life. They want you to audit review it with the anticipation that you might take the next step of actually working on it. I guess I should state that. But there are times where people say, can you just audit it for us and tell us what you think, and then write it up and then give it to us, right? But most of the time people do that. They want you to then sit in the pilot seat and to fly the plane. So understand that the aircraft is already flying, it's already in the air, it's already left the ground, and people are using it and they depend upon it every day. It's very, 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 very important. Also understand that, and because of I have multiple kind of career paths, etc., and expertise, I can tell you that if you are a FileMaker senior developer and you have 7 to 10 years of legit, serious experience, like working at a consultancy where you're doing lots of different projects, lots of different tasks, the amount of technical knowledge that you have and the amount of basically professionalism and your technical skills and customer management skills, all that should equal about what you would have if you were a professional airline captain or pilot with about the same amount of time. When you, after about 7 to 10 years of experience, you're ready to be the captain of the airplane, which means you're the guy in charge. The first officer is the guy, gal, whoever. I say guy, it's a guy, gal, doesn't matter. The person sitting next to you who is there, it's kind of like your junior trainee. They can fly it. If you die of a horrible heart attack in the plane, which almost never happens, but they're there to backstop you, to learn from you. You can let them drive and you keep an eye on and let them learn. Depends. Some captains are like that. Sometimes they want the guy in the right seat or person in the right seat, the gal in the right seat to sit there and shut up and not say anything. So, but we're not talking about the first officer job, the junior assistant job. We're talking about the left seat, the main job. So understand that it's actually really, really similar. 7 to 10 years gets you to be a very competent senior FileMaker professional developer. It's about the same amount of training and time on this over here as well. I am not at that level. I'm a helicopter guy, but I'm about halfway to that in the aviation world, and it's interesting. There's a lot of similarities, so I'm going to do that. So let's talk about day one, right? So today, assumptions. I'm gonna assume that the attitude that things that we're doing, yeah, there is the video, the meme of the emergency inflatable autopilot, which is really funny. But the RCC attitude about this is about going into the review or the audit with the overarching goal that you can do the audit review, but if you want to be the person that's going to fly the plane after the review is over or you've reviewed it, you're looking for a good fit. Some salespeople that I've run into at other companies, and I won't specify what these other companies are, some of them are FileMaker companies, it's like they got to get the deal no matter what, and it doesn't matter whether there's a good fit or not, right? For example, if you have a boss who doesn't like you, doesn't respect you, doesn't want to pay you, or they're asking you to fly, for example, you're qualified to fly a Cessna, maybe a very nice Cessna, but they say, hey, would you like to fly this over here? If Megan, and in equivalent level, what Megan can fly right now is a twin engine piston aircraft. That's where Megan's skill set is at about. I'm not picking on her. It's multi-engine rating, complex, high performance, but she doesn't have the experience really to drive a 737 or a 777 or 787, a big complex airplane with a lot of people in back. She's not there yet, but she's building. So she's about halfway there, right? And so one of the things that you do is someone says, hey, can you sit in this plane? And you're like, no, I don't. It's not a good fit fundamentally because I don't have the experience. Now, you might be honored and privileged to fly in the aircraft, but then you're running a high risk of crashing the plane, which is not good. So just understand that's the concept here is we're looking for a good fit, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say, you got to get the deal no matter what. You got to get the deal, right? You got to get it, got to close it. It doesn't matter whether it's a good fit. We want that deal, right? No. We also assume that positive outcome is reasonably possible, right? And hard work may be required. So let's talk about this a little bit. So customer driven, right? Why are you so you go to your first meeting with the customer and you have to figure out the customer's fundamental attitude. Now, when you meet with the customer, we'll talk about the different levels of customers that your people are going to talk to, but you're going to talk to someone who called you. They may or may not have any ability to hire you, may not have any money, but somehow the initial conversation you're having, and what is their attitude is very, very important, right? So it starts kind of at this high level here, and it descends downward and kind of in a negative sort of trajectory. We love FileMaker. We ran into one of these the other day. We love FileMaker. Solution is great. The person who was supporting it, retired, but we might need some help maybe someday, right? Actually pretty rare. Pretty rare. I don't see this too often. The next one down is fairly common. FileMaker is important, but has some issues. We need some help. So the implication is that once you've done this review and audit, you're going to have a meeting with them, and then they expect you to kind of be able to go fix it, right? And then this is one that I see, unfortunately, probably half the time. FileMaker might be okay, but our previous developer made a hot mess. And of course, this is what they're saying, right? And they're like talking to you. It's all their fault, and we want it fixed, right? This one here you got to watch out for, because it's probably not all the previous developer's fault. There's probably plenty of blame to go around for a whole lot of people, right? And so you've got to watch out for this one. And then the last one is FileMaker sucks. So let's talk about this in terms of the airplane analogy, right? If you get into an airplane, odds are that you're going to get hired and stuck in an airplane that's perfectly functioning is really rare. That's that top one up here. The second one down here is that you probably have, it's a 2-engine 737 or something like that. One engine's running hot or rough or not running at all. The other engine's running fine. Those twin-engine airliners fly just fine on one engine, right? It's not ideal, it's not optimal, but they fly fine on one engine. That's pretty common. You're going to get hired into it. It mostly works pretty good, but we have this other stuff we want to do, or this other stuff is broken. A good, competent pilot should be able to fly that aircraft on one engine, no problem. Fly it around, land it safely, or in the case of our analogy, you'd be expected to climb out on the wing and fix the engine. It doesn't really work in our example, but that's kind of what you'd have to do. But it'll fly on one engine. Now, the one down here at the bottom, both engines are on fire, and the airplane's out of coffee, right? And that's a airplane joke from the old days, but everyone was about to die, no one cared, but then they said, "Stewardess, is there anything you're not telling us?" And they said, "Yes, we're also out of coffee." And then everyone loses their shit, and the papers are screaming and throwing stuff. Is this bad? So both engines are on fire and are off, and the plane's upside down, and you're out of coffee. So that's not good. You might not want to be taking that job, because the amount of, we said hard work is required. I'm never afraid of hard work, but is a positive outcome a reasonable expectation? If you put in hard work and really kill yourself, is a positive outcome, is it reasonable to expect that would happen? If not, you may not want to take the job of climbing in that aircraft, right? I will simply say that I have turned down several projects for some Fortune 10 companies. Well, one was the state of California, and they're not Fortune anything. And another one was for a company, it was basically it's the parent company of Taco Bell and Pizza Hut, things like that. And they basically, the one with the state of California, the airplane was on fire. Everyone was already dead in the back of the airplane. And they wanted, and they said, well, we would like you, Richard, to come in and manage it. Want me to manage it, right? Like, tell people what to do to fix it. Except everyone's dead, and everyone knew and so in my analysis, everyone was down here in this mode right here, and I realized that the probable positive outcome was unlikely, highly unlikely. And so why would they come to me to hire me to do it as an outside consultant? I was an employee, right? Their employees had built this thing, and now it's a giant mess, and they'd had a couple other contractors work on it, and it was just a mess. And so my estimation that wouldn't end well, and it would damage my reputation, so I didn't take the work, even though they promised to pay, whatever. But it wasn't like they're going to pay quadruple my rate or some asinine crazy thing for me to ignore the obvious fire behind me and fly it anyway, right? No, it was going to be standard hourly rate, and they wanted me to be there. and I think they were looking to blame the crash on someone who wasn't them, and I didn't want to be anywhere near it, right? So understand that this is your kind of your continuum of super happy customer, and they just want to have you on, maybe an employee or part-time or on speed dial. So if they need something, they can get that, all the way down here to where probably FileMaker is going to get thrown out. The product, the solution is bad. They assume the product is bad. Every negative possible thing they're going to have, it's down here, right? You don't want to be anywhere near this. These ones in here are your two most likely scenarios, right? Either one engine is running rough, you need to tune it up, or one engine's out, but reasonable expectation that you can save the situation. Now moving forward, let's talk about the players. We got the management people. These are the people decision making and the ability to authorize funding. Stakeholders is another kind of term that you hear, a person, a group with an interest in a project, right? And I'm going to go to Dave here just in a second, Dave, so stand by. And then you have the users, right? And one of the things that came back to me was that you have stakeholder, and a lot of times I use slang terms to describe some of these people. And when I get the management, right? Like when I deal with Claris, right? It's kind of an interesting organization, right? But with the case at Claris, you're always called by someone who is down in this area down here. They might be in here, but they're not these people up here. So if you talk to people at Claris, almost invariably, they're people who don't have any sort of actionable power. They can't sign a contract. They can't pay you. They just mostly get there, they talk to you, and then they reminisce about how they wish they could have something if you just volunteer and give it to them for free, right? Understanding that your users, so I'm going to go to the next slide. Well, you got IT people too, so that's the other group. But the users are using a solution, and the best companies to work for, I find, is that when the users and stakeholder managers are the same person, right? And so when you get a disconnect, you got the users down here, they're working on it, and you've got the what I call the juice holder. Instead of the management, I go back over here to management, right? I call, instead of stakeholders, I got stakeholders, then above there, up here, you've got what I call the juice holder. They hold the juice. They're the ones who have the juice being the money. They're the ones that can actually pay for you to have a job there or to have a contract there, something like that, right? So and so Nathan's agreeing on Twitch about previous experience about if we're at that bottom category where the customer is just really unhappy and everything's on fire, he thinks run. I mean, you got to be careful with that. The question is, can you salvage it? If you get to a customer and they've been through a number of different consultants, then probably it's not the customer or not the consultants, it's the customer. You have to look at that objectively. We can talk about that a little bit, but yeah. So Nathan, you could be part of the live stream here. We could turn you on. We're not going to do that, but you have valuable expertise here, and we like to see that. Thanks for sharing that. So the people at the top, management, instead of calling management, I'm going to call them the juice holders going forward. So we have the juice holders on one side. They're the ones who can commit funds, which at the end of the day is what's required. We're not going to volunteer to do this stuff for free. We got the stakeholders. We got the users. These people might be the same person or might be three totally different groups of people. Dave, what do you think? People who use it and the people who pay for it, frequently different, right?
In my experience, they're almost always different.
Okay.
The landmine that I've run into is that even though the stakeholder isn't the person that authorized the funds, if you get in a situation where the stakeholder complains, you still get shot. So even if the stakeholder isn't the person that authorized the funds, you still have to make efforts to keep that person happy. I've also run into situations where the users didn't appear to be important, but it turned out that if they complained, then the stakeholder complained, and it still went to the juice holder and you still got shot. So even though you can't ignore somebody just because they don't control the funds, because very often the person that controls the funds is the person most removed from the solution. They're depending on other people to get the job done. They're just controlling the money. They're the bean counter, whatever you want to call them. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and so the problem is that the user frequently, if the juice holder doesn't appreciate what the users are doing or the challenges they're having, they're not going to authorize an external consultant to come in. Now, if you're being hired, like say you're Kyle and you're going to work at Victoria's Secret, they're hiring for a file. I was told they were hiring for a FileMaker job, so maybe Kyle's going to do that. But you get the idea that they're not going to interview you for the job unless someone already up here at this level here has already made a allocation or a budget comment that, yeah, we can hire someone, we have the budget, let's go ahead and do interviews. Very rarely does a company do interviews without a budget in place to hire that person if they find the right person. Does that make sense? Right? So the juice holders, the people in management who have the ability, like at Claris, you have to talk to at least a vice presidential level person to have any sort of ability to do anything. And even then, it's pretty limited on what sort of budget they have access to. But anyone below the level at Claris, for example, a VP, pretty much almost doesn't have any tangible power in terms of dealing with outside people, right? Outside consultants or outside. You're a garbage man, you're a cook, you're a kitchen, doesn't matter. You have to be at least a VP level to have that control. So really you can talk to all the users and the stakeholders, but if you don't have buy-in from the people who have the money, which at Claris is a VP level person, for example, I'm just picking on them because I know them quite well, you're not going to get anywhere. Right? So you have to have that buy-in. So that's a really important part of the conversation. Now, another part of the conversation is the IT person, right? So now this is kind of funny down here. So the question is what kind of IT people do you have, right? IT people are a interesting operation because they are tasked should be tasked with supporting the technical operations, the technical needs of a company. IT operations typically will have their own political agenda, and it's much more obvious because I understand technical quite a bit better than some political things, but I could see it pretty obviously. So it's interesting. Are they there to help? Are they neutral? We'll get back to this in a second, but IT is a fourth kind of component of this operation, right? What are they? You've got the people up here. You got the people here who have some sort of vested interest in this. Then you got the money. And then the question is IT is one of three things. Either they love FileMaker and they're happy to help, or they're neutral. They're neutral and they're like, FileMaker, we really recommend you use SQL on a full LAMP stack or whatever they want to call it, and do this other stuff. But if you want to do FileMaker, it's fine. It's on you. We're going to kind of ignore you. You do your own thing. So they're kind of agnostic. They don't care, and they're not going to really help you. So they're helpful, or they're not going to be helpful, they don't care, or they're actually going to work against your interests. Oh, you can't have a FileMaker here. That's not authorized. You're not authorized to have that. We have to install that. It has to pass our certification, and it hasn't passed our certification, so you can't have it. So you have one of three levels of IT you have to think about too. If I was going to go to work, and I was Kyle going to go to work at Victoria's Secret, and IT was being jacked like that, and you know that you're going to spend a lot of time fighting that battle, the question is, do you want to fight the battle, and are you interested in doing that, right? I'm at an age now where I'm tired of kind of fighting battles that are obviously stupid, right? So, I mean, I don't mind fighting an important battle that is not, it's a new thing and people may not be aware of it. That's why we do live streams, education. But, either you support FileMaker or you're not. And, and if you don't, then there's probably a pretty serious political bias in there. And you're up to your own little, doing your own little kingdom mission building within the IT department. So we see that a lot. Only Microsoft products or only Oracle products or maybe Google products or only AWS products, right? Has to be, as long as it's a database, a SQL database running with AWS and AWS APIs, it's fine, right? That kind of stuff. You see that all the time. So you're going to talk to all four groups. Very, very important when you go into a meeting. You're going to talk to them. You're going to find out, are they happy with the solution, right? Initially, you're going to only talk to people who call you in. What you have to do is you have to ask them, do you have budget, right? If you're an outside consultant, you have to ask, do they have any money to spend, and are you willing to commit that? If they're trying to hire someone, I think you're kind of already past that. Like Kyle at Victoria's Secret, they're already past. I mean, they would never interview Kyle unless they already had that allocated. But you have to make sure there's money for that, right? And then you need to figure out what IT thinks of it, etc. If you can, it's very, very important, right? You need to make lots of notes and document it, right? So let's talk about common themes. Dave, once again, I want you to jump in here quite a bit on this. The juice holders, and we mentioned this, and the users may or may not be the same people. You've got to figure out what kind of financial commitment you can get. Canberra 57, who retired, by the way, he said there could be multiple IT departments within the same company, one company-wide, maybe another one is specifically where they worked. You have to deal with more than one IT department, which makes double jeopardy, right? So do you have two groups of people who are uncooperative, or just one group of people that are uncooperative, right? Because I can tell you one's enough. One is enough. So you need to figure out as you get past the first meeting, and you find out, yes, you're the user. Yes, you're interviewing me. Yes, you have the solution. Do you like it? Yes or no? What does it work for you? What parts are broke? What does it need to do? You have to figure out if that person can bind the company to a legal agreement, right? Can that person actually hire you? No, they just make a recommendation uphill, right? That part of it. Stakeholders and juice holders, frequently the same, but not necessarily. You can have a financial department that holds the strings, but they are not really held accountable for the performance of this other group, right? So the users and the stakeholders could totally be doing this important research and development, or maybe shipping the product out, but maybe it's fulfillment and they're shipping it, but they report kind of laterally to sales department, and sales only cares about selling the product. The VP of sales doesn't care about that. So if the database doesn't quite work for them, or it doesn't have all the features they want, screw the warehouse guys, because the sales guys need all the tools, right? You can see these kind of organizational issues, right? So hopefully the person who's above the users and the stakeholders has their best interest at heart. Does that make sense? Yeah, Canberra says, yeah, retirement, damn straight. I worked in advanced threat technologies, not the nuke side. Okay, so yeah, but no one knows anything about that part of it. If I just tell them that you work, they get an idea, right, of where you're at, right? Not DOD, but it's private. Well, kind of. It is government still, right? Sandio is one of those organizations that was, they're private, but kind of not really, because they live completely on federal money for the most part. So one might assume that all three groups are in alignment in a well-organized company. They generally are, but you're probably not that lucky, right? I'm never that lucky, right? I get called by one person, the other person can't commit the funds, etc. It's always excitement. Once again, it doesn't apply if you're an in-house developer, because they're generally going to interview you with that anticipation. So the juice holders may not even be the ones who've reached out to you, right? If you have a job interview, once again, you're fine. We kind of covered this. Dave, along the way, right? How do you get in front of the people who have the juice, right? You're at the end user level, and they say, oh no, I'm just going to ask my boss for this, right? Somehow you have to show value to the boss's boss's boss, right? You have to show value.
I have been stuck in that situation, and the strategy I used is I did the most careful audit I could, and in my mind, even for an audit, you're trying to show the person some type of ROI to give them the confidence that you can continue to do that. So I ended up giving them this very elaborate report with all kinds of diagrams and stuff in it to give to the person who really controlled the funds. And that seemed to help the situation a little bit. Another situation I ran into, and it was the strangest thing for me, was that I was talking to a juice holder. He had committed the funds. They had actually signed a contract with RCC, and 2 days before I was due to actually start development, they called me and told me they had changed their minds. They didn't hire somebody else. They just changed their mind about the project completely. It was the strangest thing.
Yeah, so once again, the juice holders and the stakeholders and the end users are not in synchronization together. That's not a great thing. So once again, may not be the same. So those people, back to that one screen, that's a good list of things to have. So common themes. Okay, here's the IT theme. This probably should have come after that, but IT, generally, they don't like FileMaker, or they'll just ignore it. I think in most cases, if they just ignore it, I'll take that. I've actually had it where they actively work against you. We talked about this last week with the California Department of Justice. Some of the stuff, the shenanigans, I would say, they pulled because our tech was working, and then they went into the switches, the managed switches, and programmed them not to pass the FileMaker traffic or on the network, which broke everything. But yet, what you're going to find is you deal with IT organizations is that a good IT organization has a couple things, main missions in mind. Their mission is to further and support the tools that the company needs to be successful, and to fend off and deal with security issues, right? Really the two things that they do, okay? And those are intertwined and interdependent and also horrifically important. What you run into, though, is you run into organizations that'll hire a CIO or CTO or whatever you're going to hire, and what happens is that they're like, well, I'm a Microsoft guy, right? So we only use Windows 10. We don't use Linux servers. We only use the latest Microsoft Server 2016 or 2020 or whatever they've got, or whatever tech stack they're bent on promoting, because that's their comfort zone. And really, what it should be is what's the best fit for the company, not what you want to move the company to, right? So almost never do they hire a Fortune 500 CEO and he goes, yeah, I don't like Microsoft. I kind of put up with Apple, but I really love FileMaker. It's fantastic. It's awesome. We're going to change everything to FileMaker, okay? I've never seen that happen ever, okay? And so, it's one of those sort of things that people never, what do they say? No one ever got fired for recommending Microsoft. That's kind of mostly true, but not really, in this day and age. I think AWS, Amazon, is a very safe place to be, but they don't really have an operating system, right? And a hardware stack, right? I mean, I think they'd love to play in that world, but a lot of these companies are trying to do things, and they run, like we just got notification that Twitter decided it's not going to use their live streaming thing anymore. Periscope's going away, right? So everyone wants to be what they're not, right? Dropbox wants to be a social media platform. What morons at Dropbox thought that up? I have no idea. If any of you know Dropbox, feel free to send them my scolding, right? But everyone wants to be what they're not, because somehow the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? So you get into this issue with IT. Hopefully, is IT working against it, or maybe they're just helpful. So at the bottom is what I consider rare. They're actually helpful. They're promotive. They're positive. They promote it. I think to some degree, Apple corporate is like this. To a point, not always, but they are to a point, because big IT people generally, they get paid lots of money for doing big code projects with big professional expensive systems, and if you could do it cheaper with smaller stuff, why do that? Because it doesn't help your reputation, right? So it's just kind of FileMaker is this interesting thing, right? And so you have to think about the IT component of it, right? So then we got common themes for usability. This is the one that would drive Nick absolutely insane. It's so important. Megan, are you listening to me? Megan, psst, Megan, hello, you listening? Yes, she's listening. All right, listen. So you go into a FileMaker solution. Dave and I want to talk about this here in a second. So you go into a FileMaker solution you didn't build. It didn't come from starting point. It came from someone's butt, right? It's hideously ugly. But here is the operative thing, right over here. I'm going to use my little finger right there. The existing users are used to it. They're used to it. Why? Because it was ugly. It's stupid. It makes no intuitive sense whatsoever. It's horrible, but they're all used to it. Therefore, they're very efficient at using it, because they understand what it works. They understand how it doesn't work. They know what not to do, because there's these weird little bugs. So don't do that and then press that button or it won't work. So you have to, they know all the little tribal knowledge. It's called tribal knowledge. You sit around, the tribe sits around the campfire, and the elders explain to the youngins, don't press this button because it won't work anymore, right? It's called tribal knowledge. It's not intuitive, but so I actually had to fire a developer, and I haven't seen her in a very very long time. We hired a developer. She was a she. I think I can say that. I liked her a lot personally. She's a wonderful woman, right? Very talented. She came to RCC, and RCC has. We're always trying to upgrade systems, but some of the systems aren't as pretty as they should be because they were built 30 years ago. But we have probably collectively into some of these systems $500,000 into running the company. And so for us just to replace them or to reskin them is not a trivial exercise. It would represent a serious outlay of cash. So she was hired, this person was hired to do external work. Like Dave Henderson is here hired. He's retired kind of now, but really Dave would go out, or Christian or any of the developers here go out, they work with a customer, okay? That was her job. That was her job. She could not get past the fact that our internal systems weren't as pretty as Nick would have them be, right? You think that Nick would have this problem, but Nick understands that sometimes you just kind of have to let it be. She couldn't get past that. So every time we would say, log your time or do something like that, she would spend hours trying to show us how to rebuild the system. I said, you're not being paid to do that. You're being paid to talk to customers, work with customers. Yeah, but this other system is so... She couldn't get her head unwrapped around the fact that it wasn't beautiful. And part of the problem was if that we changed everything, we would have to take all our users who are trained with tribal knowledge on how to put their time into our system and retrain them, which would be a big deal. Maybe we want to do it at some point, but it's not going to be the job of the brand new engineer that we just hired. So changing the usability will disrupt the users, but for new users, right? For new users, they will have an easier time learning it. So what do you do? I mean, this is kind of what do you folks do? The tribe has spoken, right? Kyle says that before he went to Victoria's Secret, he built a database for the Bellevue Athletic Club. Before I started working there, they were trying to use MS SharePoint. MS SharePoint's more of a kind of a document management system, I thought, for the most part, right? It was horrible. I created a FileMaker database for them, and the usability, customizability of their database blew them away, right? Well, okay, so that's somewhat of a different thing. We're talking about a FileMaker system, right? So if you're going to replace an existing, so Kyle, you're out of the lane. I don't know why I read that. Okay, Kyle's talking about if you build a brand new system, okay? Yes, if you build a brand new system, you get a brand new interface. We're not talking about that. Today's conversation is not about building it new, okay? It's about if you get dropped into the airplane again, right? Are you going to, while you're flying, say, oh, I'm going to put the autopilot on and I'm going to go out on the wing and build a new wing. Instead of a jet, it's going to be a biplane because it's better for you, what you need. It's better fit. Never mind the people all have to, get out of their seats and then they have to all hang on the wings while you're rebuilding the inside of it. It's going to be a giant mess, right? Where they're used to sitting and doing things a certain way, right? Do you really want to force the people to go through a redesign? Maybe the usability is so bad you have to do that. But if you're being brought into a company situation where, remember, you had the bottom one where things are totally on fire, you don't want to be part of that, but you're in the middle somewhere where some work needs to be done, you need to evaluate whether when you want to slay this dragon, right? We talk about the battles you want to fight. There's only so many battles you can fight, right? With the FileMaker solution. If they're telling you what to build, go build this, go build this, go build this, and you say, sir, yes, sir, and you go do it. But if they're saying, what do you, Kyle, think you need to do, right, to make it better? And so you got to decide, is there anchor buoy? Oh, no, there's no anchor buoy. And so everything is one spider diagram. So if you switch the spider diagram, you put your time into switching to an anchor buoy, the performance would double or triple or quadruple in speed. Very possible. That could happen. And so would you put your time in there, or would you be trying to skin it with the Nick usable beauty of a solution that's elegant and supple in all ways, right? So the question is, what dragons do you want to fight? Because you can't fight them all. You got to pick your battles, right? Makes sense?
This is a very important point. I've run into this a lot. If somebody's already been using a solution, it's a thing that I personally call institutional inertia. And by that, I mean people have a solution and it's not perfect, and maybe in reality there is no perfect solution. But over time, everybody, regardless of the level they're on, they've developed all of these workarounds to make whatever they have going work for them. And they keep doing it because it works. That's why I call it institutional inertia. The bad side of institutional inertia is institutional inertia kind of kills your ability to be to be as flexible as you have to be in the modern workday environment. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you can go in and totally fix everything. Sometimes, as a developer going to an external solution, you have to make an evaluation of what one change can I make that is going to allow these guys to still stay in business and not have a stroke and give them the biggest bang for the buck. Sometimes you have to put in the extra time and the extra thought to make that determination. It isn't always going to be about make this a totally perfect solution right now. My favorite phase to a customer is phase one. I use that all the time.
So one of the things that comes in on this, and I guess I'm going to pivot briefly back to the job interview part of it. You might want to find some low-hanging fruit, something that's broke that you can fix easily, that would be highly visible and high value, so why we call it low-hanging fruit, and take care of that. Helps sell your skill set to them. Find something, so in phase one or phase point one, or something before you even collect a dollar, you have a contract, you do something small for them. And I can see a lot of consultancies like, I will not touch your database for less than $250 an hour or something, right? And so you get that kind of person with that attitude, but I think companies are hesitant to just trust people, and when they flap their lips. I'm here flapping my lips, but I've got the files, the sample data, the video training to backstop what I say, right? So it's me not flapping my lips. It's me saying, here it is, and I have the juice to show it. But most people don't understand that. So if you go into an organization, it's sometimes good to say, oh, you have this one thing. Well, I can spend an hour and a half fix this for you. And then, oh, by the way, so if you're interested in hiring me, feel free to reach out to me. And meanwhile, I fix this free thing for you. And they'd come back. Now, you're not training them to expect free stuff. You're just showing them that that's a sample of what you can do for them. May not be a bad idea. Once again, try to demonstrate you have that technical skill set. And to get in front of that helps the end user, especially if he has an ROI, a return on investment, the end user person. I don't know where Josh kind of dropped in here, but we're talking about the juice holders, stakeholders, and the end users. If the end user can take it to the juice holder and say, hey, this person we interviewed, whether it's in-house or contract or whatever you're going to do, and they spent 30 minutes or an hour doing this thing, and we've been trying to fix this for 6 months, and man, this is so much better. That only helps you. That only helps you. I probably shouldn't be telling you folks this, but this is, kind of common sense, but some people like common sense. So there you go. So Nathan on the Twitch is agreeing with this. Yeah, I appreciate it. So yeah, so we're kind of at the point we're kind of landing the plane here. Today, once again, was kind of this. It's this stuff. Listen, this is for Megan and those of you who haven't been through this. Josh and the people who've been around the block know this stuff. This is all the stuff that you're only going to learn after you burn your hand on the stove. It's like when you tell your child, if you have any kids, please don't touch the red hot stove. And as a parent, you tell them not to. And you also know they're going to burn their hand on the stove. And they're going to scream and cry and raise holy hell. But it's somewhat educational for them to do that if it's not life-threatening and will cause paralysis or something, right? Burning a hand and getting a blister on your finger is a great way of learning that something's really hot. So sometimes you have to do that, but I'm trying to help you understand the components of today's the broadcast of talking to people, understanding a lot of the pieces, the maneuvering pieces you're dealing with over and above stuff. Now let me lay this one on you here real quick. And I've met people who are very much like this. So FileMaker developers tend to do two things, another common theme. And this isn't so much about them, it's about you, okay? And I'm not telling you to do one thing or the other. I'm saying just keep this in mind. FileMaker developers tend to do two things, and they're interrelated, but not at the same time. They don't use anchor buoy, or they don't document their scripts, or they don't number their TOs or number their scripts or number their layouts or anything. There's no organizational. We're going to talk about this, I think, either tomorrow or Wednesday. We've talked about all these topics before. We're just bringing all this material together in 5 days and telling you where to go and reference it. But they don't document their solutions, right? Right? Because, they're too busy, and then they forget to do it, and then, and then they never come back to it. Every last developer I've ever met this is their inclination. I very rarely do have a developer who will sit and write the docs on the front end. I tend to do that only in like Word, so I can sketch out if I have a complex process what that process looks like. So I'm not tempted to try to code it. But most people just code it and I'll document it later when I get back from vacation or whatever, right? Never happens. So the corollary or the inversion of or the inverse of that is when they tell their customers, yeah, I'm not gonna fix what you need fixed. I'm gonna rebuild it because the solution that you have, I don't understand it and I don't want to bother with it. And so you're just gonna pay a full check to rebuild it from scratch, right? And I find this kind of, I don't even know what to think. I actually connected these dots the other day, and it's really the same stupid thing. And it's really necessarily not even part of this. I would only tell you as a developer that if you go into a situation and you have an end user and they're not the juice holder, and you tell them, I'm only going to rebuild it. Because when Kyle goes into Victoria's Secret and says, no, I have to interview all the models, I have to take all their photos, we have to have a personal lunch date with each one, and then I'm going to rebuild it from scratch. Are they really going to accept that, right? When all they needed was a new report, right? They need a new financial report. Kyle's got all these demands for the Victoria's Secret in-house FileMaker developer job, right? And so, so are they going to go for that, right? Now, if they know they've got a basket, they and their team and their previous developers have woven a basket of literally a squirrel's nest, what we call a squirrel's nest, or their business has changed so much that they know that the solution is no longer relevant to their new business model, then yeah, you can pitch, build a new one, right? And then why are you the best person to do that, right? But once again, I think I've met people who are like, they're like, I only do agile development, or I only do waterfall, or I only do, incremental time and materials contracts. And they go to customers up front and they beat their hands on the tables demanding certain things. I have some developers who refuse to work on a customer's existing solution. They will only build it new. So, and I understand that there's times and rules, like time material is important. There are times where a fixed cost can be reasonable if things can be documented. Some things can be reasonably done. I just said be cautious about going to a customer and only telling them you only build it from scratch, right? I've met some developers the last couple of years that are that way. So yeah. Kyle doesn't actually, well, I told you Kyle interviewed for the job at Victoria's Secret. True story. Totally truthful.
Yeah, Richard never tells stories.
But yes, the point is that it makes for a fun conversation. But yeah, I mean, but it's not actually, and Kyle knows it's not too far from the truth, right? So I'm picking on him a little bit, but if you're an in-house developer, all these topics are, as a professional consultant outside, professional, once again, implying that the internal people are not professional. As an outside contract developer, we see this all the time. And an in-house professional developer, an in-house professional salaried developer won't see these very often unless they get transferred to a different department or they leave the company and go somewhere else. But it's the data, the information here is all valid either way. The only thing, like I said, that the paid salary people don't have to worry about is allocation of funding for their job, because there shouldn't even be a job interview unless the allocation for the funding for that position is already kind of reserved and set aside. So Kyle did apply for the Wizards of Coast once FileMaker. I don't know what Wizards of the Coast is. Is that like some sort of?
They make Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
So.
All right, so they make all that stuff, right? I think there was a South Park episode about that one time. Right? Magic the Gathering, but it was chicken fighting under the basements. The chickens would fight, but the chickens are playing the cards, right? Really funny. All right, cool. Well, that's about it for today. We ran out our time on this. Coming up, let me see. So once again, final analysis. Yeah. So here's the question. Are you the right pilot for the job, right? We talked about this. Are you the right person to sit here? Okay. Are you qualified for the level of developer they need? And maybe they don't have a very advanced solution and Megan says, screw this, I'm out of here. I'm going to go work. Maybe she can get a job, maybe, somewhere doing some basic stuff. I'm not, Jake's going to yell at me. So my apologies, Jake. But the point is that she's a mid-level developer or whatever that is. And so she can fly a plane, maybe not as sophisticated plane, but she can fly a plane. If she has a job interview, is that appropriate? Is she comfortable doing that? Is IT support helpful? Is there any IT support? I didn't mention that. I guess there could be no IT support. Then who's going to do your server, right? What are you going to do for a server, right? All these things kind of come up to it. But are you the right person? Because once again, you're being asked to take over the job in flight. It's not like you get to take it off, right? And you can abort. Once you're in the job, you're in the plane, the solution's already going, it's already running, and people are in the back, right? And they expect you not to kill them, right? A very important concept, right? So, Kyle says it would have been fun. I was pretty excited, but the position lost its funding, so he got a job somewhere else, etc. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's an important part of this, right? So we talk about that. So tomorrow and the upcoming days, we're going to be diving into the more technical components. Today was not very technical. Organ Dean is still here. I feel bad about that because Organ Dean is a very high-end professional kind of person. So I'm going to just slide this over here. We are going to probably swap out there shouldn't be a Saturday, Margaret. I don't think we're doing Saturday over here. So you need to figure out what the next from October 1st is. But yeah, so we're going to be doing structural issues, talking about relational diagrams. This is all the stuff we've taught you. Everything here we've already trained you. There's nothing new here, but we're looking at this from the outside perspective of not how you're going to build it, how to evaluate how someone else has built it. And we'll probably pop up a couple samples, screenshots of other solutions, and if you saw this, what do you think, right? We'll talk about that, right? Because assume that the previous developer is not around. I've actually been there. I've been there in 3 situations where developers have died on the job. 2 of them were mine, and 1 was someone else. And you have to kind of come in behind and kind of do post-dead developer cleanup. And I'm not being crass about it. Actually, 4 of them now, I think about it. And so it's not an uncommon thing when you're in a big FileMaker community and we know a lot of people and, Josh, this, that. Oh, that's a good one there. I'm going to move this over here. So you want to be a pilot. So you want to be a pilot, right? So, yeah, I mean, you can learn on the job as long as they're willing to humor you, right? So there you go. But yeah, I'm a senior developer here to solve problems, right? So yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'm going to cut you folks loose. It'll be a fun day tomorrow. We'll have Calvin here tomorrow. We'll have Garrett Debsky here on Wednesday, and then Jacob Taylor here for Thursday and Friday. All right, folks. Dave Henderson, thank you for being here. Appreciate it, Dave.
No problem. Anytime.
All right, folks. See ya.
Just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the 4th. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.